Thank you. Welcome to the Film Fan Club Show. I'm Sam Carrico. I hope everybody had a good week. I did. I got to see 007 No Time to Die on Wednesday. We'll be talking about it a little bit more later on in the show, but I really enjoyed this movie. It had some controversial plot points, though. Did you guys pick up on this? I really thought the only way it could have been any more controversial is if the plot involved 007 exposing Prince Andrew. It's got a pretty robust cast. Ana de Armas is here. She's not in it a lot, but I thought she was great. Her character is kind of naive, but plays a pivotal role in helping Daniel Craig unravel the plot, and like the writers, I also really enjoyed Knives Out. I mean, I've heard the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but this is just taking a working part off a different vehicle. No, but most of the cast is great here. Daniel Craig seems to be way more enthusiastic in this movie than in Spectre, where he infamously said during an interview that he'd rather slash his wrists than play Bond again. And that's kind of funny because I felt the same way watching him in that movie. No, but No Time to Die wasn't the only story this week. There was a lot of TV news as well. Did you guys see this? Netflix has ordered a spin-off to that 70s show titled That 90s Show. I guess it makes sense because we're now just as far from the 90s as the original show was from the 70s when it started. In case you didn't feel old already. Kurtwood Smith and Deborah Jo Rupp, who I learned today are still alive, will be returning as Red and Kitty respectively. Variety is reporting that Kathryn Hahn will return as Agatha Harkness in a WandaVision spin-off for Disney+. Nothing is known about the plot except that it's a dark comedy. It would be kind of funny though if the show picks up with her character the same way she was at the end of WandaVision, you know, just a mindless zombie carrying out predetermined events. I mean, for us Marvel fans, that'd be kind of relatable. Okay, we've got a great show for you lined up. Later on, we're going to be talking about the looming strike that could have long-lasting effects on Hollywood. But first, Clay Fisher is with me to break down No Time to Die. Let's get right to it. Okay, he is an online content creator and the host of Classic Modern Film. Clay Fisher is with me. Hey, Clay.
Hello, how you doing?
I really enjoyed your video, Is James Bond a Villain? So whenever I saw that, I was like, okay, he'd be the perfect person to talk to about No Time to Die. So for those who haven't seen it, I was just wondering if you could maybe kind of restate the premise of it for us, but also like, how do you think it compares? Because it was released before No Time to Die.
Well, I mean, when I first started, I was thinking, of all the criticisms that they were giving concerning Bond about his misogyny, and also we don't talk about his killings in a way because, well, he's a spy, it's his job to kill, but most of all, his biggest crime of all is misogyny. Being a sexist and all of that, and sleeping with a bunch of women and then leaving them for the next one. So what I was trying to do is also try to add a little darkness into Bond and ask ourselves, like, if he's a questionable role model that we should get. I mean, I'm a Bond fan, like I'm a James Bond fan. In no way am I against Bond or do I hate the character itself, but I had to acknowledge the criticisms as well that are legitimate ones. And so, and I was wondering, how can Bond be coexist in this modern age where feminism is strongly portrayed, where female empowerment is growing a lot more, and so for Bond to live in that era, I was questioning if there was even a place for Bond in this modern age. So looking at No Time to Die, since you know that it was written, the screenplay was written by a woman, right? And so you can tell right away, like, the changes and the different directions, because in all of the James Bond movies, he's very more like he hides his feelings, his emotions, but in this one, he pretty much lets out all of his feelings. Like he lets you know what he thinks, and he's in inner touch with his own feminine side of himself.
Yeah, I was so surprised that this film starts, they have him, very in touch with his feelings and emotions. Starts off, he has to, come to terms with Vesper and like forgive her in a very genuine way. And like, it's a genuine like performance that Daniel Craig's giving there. And then he gets heartbroken and betrayed, like, and very vulnerable with Madeline Swan, played by Lea Seydoux. So how do you see this progression for the Craig Bond specifically?
I mean, like when I mentioned in my video, I was always talking about how he is a tragic character as well. Every time he's so close of being happy, he's so close of leaving the world of killing and just have his own life, and then something brings him back in. It's like the Godfather 3 catchphrase, you know, when I thought I was out, they pull me back in, and that is the lifestyle of Bond. He's like, he finds Vesper, he finds Teresa from Your Majesty's Secret Service, and they all die. He's always so close of finding happiness, and then he loses it. And with No Time to Die, well, he was so close at the beginning of having that happy ending, but tragedy happens, also or betrayal happens, and as well related to friends, you know, how he has no friends, he has no family, and whenever he has friends or he meets new friends or a family, he loses it. And as well, you know, spoiler alerts, or he as well faces that tragedy of losing a friend in this one. So like, to me, No Time to Die, it almost encapsulated everything that I talk about James Bond. Like, he can't have a happy life, he can't have any friends because they all die. It's like the what the Logan movie says, you know, bad things happen to people I care about.
A lot of people are hesitant whenever you take a character who's been stagnant for so many movies. You know, I would argue, I mean, other than on Her Majesty's Secret Service, it's kind of rare that we see James Bond express much emotion outside of being the badass, cold-hearted killer. Mm-hmm. Do you clearly think it's important that they change this, you know, for the film and update him for the modern audiences? Do you think that they successfully did it though with the Craig films?
I mean, it's pretty much obvious that the Craig movies are done. Like, we all know that Craig is done. You know, he made it very clear that this is his final movie. It kind of makes sense that he would be in touch with his feelings.
They nailed it. When you're telling a story with a beginning, middle, and end, which is what they were trying to do, from Casino Royale leading directly into Quantum of Solace, and Spectre, definitely referencing those two, and then now No Time to Die, like having the same Bond girl carry forward into it. They're trying to tell a story, and an evolution of the character just goes hand in hand with that story. And in what better way than to, I think, you know, have him like finally have that little bit of happiness. I definitely think that they like nailed those aspects of it, because it's something that I'm like, you know, it could go either way. If you fuck it up, then this is James Bond we're talking about. Don't fuck it up. But I've been really impressed with the Craig films to this point. A lot of other aspects, though, are introduced into this film. We got the new 007.
At first, I was wondering, is she gonna be the new Bond girl, or not Bond girl, like the new James Bond? Is she gonna be the new replacement? I was thinking, is this gonna be like a buddy cop duo?
No, right,
like a buddy spy duo where he gives the mantle to her and then she becomes the 007. But they also they made it obvious. They told us, también, as well, that no woman is gonna be James Bond. Like the producers, they confirmed that James Bond is not gonna be a woman.
Yeah, the Broccoli family have said, I think, in interviews that they're not gonna do that.
Yeah, so she's not gonna be Bond, but they also talked deeply about the number 007, that it's not like a name, it's a number that anyone can have.
That's why I was wondering, like, are they playing coy with us a little bit? They're like, no, we would never have a woman be James Bond. We will have a woman be 007 and have her be the lead of the franchise. And I'm like, wait a sec. But I think they made it clear they're not doing that.
There can be some female spies that can be, you know, work with James Bond, not to be like sex objects.
Of course.
They can also be like a female empowerment, and also show the strength that many women want to portray in film and in media.
Well, I think that Lashana Lynch did a good job for what this film wanted her to do. You know, I was concerned before I saw the film what they wanted her to do, and for what her role was. Now, having seen the film, I think she did well, and I think she played off of Daniel Craig's Bond pretty well. Also, talking about non-sexual, I mean, he didn't have sex with her. There was a little bit of flirting, but, you know, Ana de Armas, I really enjoyed in this film. Ana de Armas as the I think 3 weeks out of CIA school agent.
Oh yeah.
What did you think of that whole sequence?
I thought it was very quick. You know.
Yeah, too fast. Not enough Ana de Armas. I agree.
Yeah. And at first I thought it was kind of random or just out of the blue to see her in that elegant dress, but you know, it's a James Bond film. You've got to have long dresses and tuxedos. So and from the moments that she had, they were really good. They were entertaining, and like you said, like Bond doesn't sleep with her. Like, here Bond doesn't sleep with anyone. Barely. She barely sleeps with anyone. Like he has no time to sleep with anyone.
No time to sleep. James
Yeah,
Bond, no time to fuck.
that
But yeah, I liked it. I think I liked it's classic James Bond. They need to infiltrate. Speaking of classic James Bond, there were so many elements like Spectre agents breaking into laboratories and stuff like that, like the gadgets and everything. But that particular sequence felt like classic James Bond. You got to break into a Spectre super meeting of the bad guy spies. So of course she has to be undercover in a gown. Of course he has to wear a tuxedo. The gown, the gravity and everything of her wearing that gown and jumping around makes no sense. It was a little distracting. I'm like, how is that staying on while she's like shooting people? But like, it doesn't need to make sense because it's a James Bond movie. I have a little bit of suspension of disbelief. And we briefly touched on Madeline Swan, but like, what did you think of Lea Seydoux' portrayal here?
um well, I think she's gonna be probably one of the better or well-known Bond girls
Mm-hmm.
from the whole franchise. I don't know if I actually believe the romance between them because Bond, he's been so imprinted. Like Bond's relationship with women has been so imprinted with us that he just sticks with them just for a little bit and then moves on. So it is kind of hard for me to buy that all of a sudden he loves her
Mm-hmm.
after he still can't get over the breakup or the hard breakup with Vesper,
Yeah.
like the woman that made him turn into a misogynist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think honestly, I do. I for the most part, I like this movie a lot. I agree. I think the Daniel Craig, not necessarily with the reasoning, because I think you can show with Daniel Craig that he can put aside being the misogynist for a movie or so. I can buy into that, but the chemistry has to be there. Just
Yeah,
like, but Eva Green and Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, that
yep,
chemistry was off the charts. They had really good chemistry, from what I can remember. It's been maybe a couple months since I've rewatched it, but in this movie, yeah, I definitely thought that she was, whenever they announced that Madeline Swan was going to be returning and they were going to be like continuing the relationship in this film, I was like, okay. I thought she was just a Bond girl inspector, and she was just going to forget about her. I didn't get the sense that she was like Vesper level, but
hmm
apparently she was. The film it was upon the performances in this film to sell me on that. And yeah, unfortunately, I think Ana de Armas and Daniel Craig had more chemistry.
I love Lea Seydoux. Like she's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
But
she's a great actress. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I don't know. I mean, with all the things I said, but maybe I think it would make sense.
I just didn't buy the fact that he would still be with her at the beginning of this film. But then, speaking of the beginning of this film, as far as
Mhm.
Bond prologues go, I'm really doing a poor job of going in chronological order. But as far as Bond prologues
Okay.
go, it's this prologue was, I think, pretty amazing. I like, from the flashback to Lea Seydoux' kid, introducing Saffron as a villain, and we'll get to Saffron in a second, or Safin in a second, but introducing him as part of her childhood, and then moving to, okay, here's where Bond is now. Everything's perfect. Suddenly it gets turned on its heels, and then that awesome chase sequence through Italy, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah, what did you think of that? I mean, as far as Bond prologues, as far as Craig Bond prologues, this has got to be one of the better ones, right?
yeah. Like this is probably one of the longest prolonged openings because I
Yeah.
was looking. Is the movie about to end already? I
Yeah.
think it was. I think it was already like 20 minutes, and they still hadn't kicked the intro. Uh, I mean, the first scene with Madeline and the villain, it
Mm-hmm.
almost reminded me of the man with the golden gun, where it
Mm-hmm.
first starts off with the villain at first, and then it goes back to the typical Bond doing his action at the opening, killing the villains in such a cool way. It was really good. Like when, for example, like with the motorcycle where he
Mm-hmm.
jumps out of the
Yeah.
staircase, that was amazing. And I've seen that in the trailer, and it still looked amazing.
Yeah, I knew that there was going to be a moment where he, yeah, is like, has a bunch of people shooting at his car, and he has to do the peel out with the guns blazing. I knew
Hmm
that was going to happen. I'd seen it in all the promotional materials for like a year and a half at this point, because this has been like a delayed a lot. So
Yeah.
I totally expected it. it's still, that tension was still there. It showed like the glass about to break, and I'm like, hurry up and do the thing. So
Yeah,
it was a really good, oh, it was like a good like Bond short film. You're like, you could have just rolled credits right there, and I've been like, okay, No Time to Die is great. Sorry, it's so good. Yeah, and again, classic Blofeld, because Blofeld is still in on the action in some way. So, but then now we gotta, I guess, talk about the main plot, Safin and his plot. As far as villains go, what did you think of Rami Malek's performance? And then what did you think of his evil schemes?
I mean, I think he was fine. I mean, he's the typical evil James Bond, twirling and always looking like I'm above you, and look how intelligent I am. Look how evil this plan is,
Yeah.
and for such villain like for from all the Daniel Craig movies that we got, that the villains were more realistic. They had realistic reasons. They were not, uh, either wanting to take over the world or wanted to kill the whole world. These people just either they were in trouble, they were like in legitimate trouble, like Le Chiffre in Casino Royale, or
Yeah.
they just wanted revenge, like Agent Javier in Skyfall. And Javier, that is my favorite villain, to be
Oh yeah.
honestly. He's
Absolutely. He's probably the best of the Bond, of the Craig Bond villains for me.
yeah.
Safin, I think, was a little bit. Did he even ever give his reason? I know he had a personal vendetta against Madeline Swan and Mr. White, but did he give his reasoning for wanting to, wipe out big portions of the world?
I mean, honestly, I don't know. 'Cause I was trying to, that was the one thing I was struggling to understand what was his whole motives.
Hmm.
Typical evil villain that we gotta stop because world domination. But, but if you're a James Bond fan, I mean, that's where you have to, I guess you can enjoy that. I mean, I didn't mind it as much.
It felt a little
And
jarring though, going from, because it does feel typical Bond. It feels like Pierce Brosnan Bond though. It doesn't feel like Craig Bond, because like you said, like all of the villains in all four of the previous Craig movies have very well defined motives, I think. In this one, he literally has no motive. It was just
yeah.
weird. I just have to ask you this briefly, because we talked a little bit before we started recording, but the plot of this film, it goes without saying, it'd be weird if we didn't mention, it's very similar to something that's going on right now. And there's a lot of real world parallels. There's also a couple mentions of nanobots in this film, but somebody mentioned online, and I thought it was a very interesting point, that every time you hear the word nanobot, it is off camera, meaning it could have been ADR and done in post after something happened in real life to make it different. Do you think that that this film was changed at all in response to what is going on right now?
Probably, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I haven't read anything about if they reshoot some scenes. I haven't read if they reshoot during last year.
Yeah.
But you can tell the obvious reasons.
And so I was surprised that they didn't reshoot more if they did just ADR some lines.
and and like, and I'm a sucker to look into social references in
Mhm.
media, especially because every decade is pretty much a influence based. Like our media or entertainment and movies and TV show that we watch is pretty much influenced by the our social culture that is going on, like in each every decade. You know how you had back in the 2020, I don't know, in the 2000s with all the patriotism and terrorism because of
9/11.
9/11.
Yeah.
And then in 2010 you got the 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 all this eh, with the president, the
Hmm.
current president in that year, and there was a lot of talk about minorities,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
diversity and women, because and now you got the issue that we're having in worldwide.
Yeah.
And so you're going to expect to see a lot of these movies where they make references.
I'm trying to think where I would rank this movie among Craig films. It is good. I really like No Time to Die. I'm gonna be upfront about it. There's some issues. Um, any issues that I have with the film, though, like Lea Seydoux' chemistry with Daniel Craig. There's a moment where Daniel Craig just he gets rescued. He should have died at sea, and he just gets rescued. I don't like it when my characters are lucky. That doesn't really feel like a good plot progression. That's like one of those things in The Dark Knight Rises where Bruce Wayne gets from the other side of the world back to Gotham City, and I'm just like, how did he get there? There's a couple of logistical things, but overall, I really enjoyed this film. Were there any drawbacks for you?
I mean, from what you said, like, yeah, at first he seemed all undefeatable because in the opening he gets shot as well. Remember in the motorcycle scene, he gets shot, but it's like nothing.
Yeah.
It's a flesh wound. And at first, I was during the first hour. At first, I was thinking this looks like a standard James Bond because I wasn't feeling like this is the grand finale. But the James Bond movies, they build up until the end where it gets really good, and that's how it was. Like for me, it went up from feeling like a standard James Bond with good action and catchy lines, funny one-liners, and then it gets to the layer of James Bond, because something I'm gonna say, Daniel Craig is probably, he could actually rival Sean Connery as one of the better Bonds.
Mm-hmm. He's got the swab thing down. Like, so I keep going back to that scene in Skyfall. There's clearly moments. Oh my goodness. Speaking of the scene where him and Ana de Armas are like, they're in the middle of a fight and then they take a break to get a drink. It's like one of my favorite Bond moments ever in all of the movies. But that reminds me clearly of like even back in Skyfall when he jumps off of the claw, that's like, and he jumps on the train and adjusts his thing. And it's like, and like he's got it down. And I have one more drawback on the film. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, you mentioned she wrote parts of the script. There were a couple moments where I felt like, I'll give an example, the desk joke. There's like a bunch of moments where her writing style is like you introduce something at the beginning of the scene and then reference at the end of the scene. So at the beginning of the scene with M, he's like, oh, did the chair get bigger, or did the desk get bigger, or did you get smaller? And then he leaves at the end of the scene angry, and he's like, that's the same size desk. And I'm just like, I don't know if that's a James Bond line. So there were a couple lines where I'm like, that's Phoebe Waller-Bridge coming in and cleaning up the script. Small things like that, I'll take them compared to, something else that would have been worse. So, I mean, overall, I'm going to recommend this movie. If anybody's watching this that hasn't seen it yet, I would say you got to see it. I think it's safe to say you would too.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I would say it's probably either out of the Daniel Craig movies, either this is his second or third best.
I would say third. I like Skyfall and Casino Royale a little bit more. Skyfall is probably my favorite of his era, but right after those two, I would put this very closely and confidently in third.
But it's kind of funny how with the Daniel Craig movies, we went from Casino Royale good, Quantum of Solace bad, Skyfall good, Spectre bad, and then No Time to Die good. So we went from good, bad. He was a hit or a miss.
He's a very consistent, you could predict kind of where his era was going to go very easily. But like I said, he's got a great trilogy of films with a couple bad ones kind of sprinkled in between. So Clay Fisher, thank you so much for joining the show. I just saw you have a new video on YouTube, so I'd encourage everybody to check out your YouTube channel. Could you just give us a preview of what this new video is about?
Since we're in the spooky month of the year, Halloween, and here I talk about witches. And here I compare an old silent film called Hassan with a modern one called The Witch from 2015. And there I gave a little brief history about about witchcraft and what was the mindset back then in medieval days and why was there so much paranoia about witches.
I'll put the link to that video in the description of this video, of course, because The Witch is one of my favorite movies.
Also, if you're a silent film buff, Hassan, this is like from 1922 and it's a Swedish film. It's a really spooky silent film because there's a lot of demonic imagery and a lot, very, very creepy. Even for that time, it looks really disturbing.
Clay Fisher, thank you so much for joining the Film Fan Club show. Hope to have you on again.
Thank you.
And finally, with spooky season upon us, making a horror movie shouldn't be scarier than watching one. Recently, an Instagram account called IA Stories started gaining traction online. According to their bio, film and entertainment workers can share stories about the issues affecting them to build solidarity across crews and crafts. Basically, people in the entertainment industry can anonymously submit problematic working conditions. For instance, an LA Times article writes about one worker messaging IA Stories on August 19th to describe an incident where a department head had died of a heart attack on set a few weeks earlier, and crew members were told to keep working. Another worker talks about falling asleep at the wheel after a 14-hour all-night shift. These are accompanied by countless other stories of grueling hours and poor compensation. These sort of horror stories are far too common among the film and entertainment industry. But what can be done? Well, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, has been negotiating with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers throughout the summer for better hours and pay, but solutions have failed to materialize. So IATSE members voted on October 1st to authorize a strike. Now just think for a second what will happen if IATSE does go on strike. Brendan Gallagher writes in Jacobin, quote, "Striking workers would include almost everyone who works on a film set. The labor stoppage would be one of the largest in Hollywood history, and with so many crafts walking out, it would be the most disruptive. Film and television in the United States would grind to a halt." We experienced a taste of something like this in 2008 with the writers' strike. If you've ever wondered what happened behind the scenes of Quantum of Solace to make it so bad, it's that the writers literally walked out. But they got serious concessions out of the industry, and people that work in those jobs now are better for it. So, as consumers, can we please avoid reacting like this guy, who wrote on Twitter, quote, "Wait, is this strike going to delay Marvel movies? Because if so, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry." No, I bet I just wouldn't like you. We just went through a tough period of no movies, only for the people who work on them to go back to shitty conditions. If it takes another period of no movies for them to finally get a leg up, I'm all for it. You should be too. Okay, that's our show. I'd like to send a special thank you to Clay Fisher for joining me this week, and another one to John Leon for additional writing on these monologues. Thank you, folks.